I am excited about today's topic because so many of us, especially if you grew up as a Christian, you may have been taught that beauty is vanity. And so, what if I told you that your beauty isn't something that you create, but it's something that God already placed inside of you? Because we spend so much time chasing beauty through skincare, makeup, diets, routines, and I love those things. But what if real radiance isn't about what you're putting on your skin or on your face, but what's happening inside of your heart? So today we're going to be talking about the kind of beauty that doesn't fade with age. And then it isn't dependent on filters through your cameras and in your cell phones, and it can't be bottled up and sold. In fact, you can't outsource this. But we're diving into that spirit beauty connection, how your inner peace, your faith, and your confidence in God, and how He can transform not just how you feel, but how you look. And here's the thing, when you start seeing beauty the way God does, everything changes and shifts, not just in your heart, but in the way you carry yourself, the way you take care of yourself, the way people respond to you. And yes, even in the way that you look. So stick with me today because by the end of this episode, you'll walk away with a fresh perspective on beauty that frees you instead of exhausting you. All right, so let's go ahead and be real. Everywhere we look, we're being bombarded with messages about what beauty should look like: flawless skin, that toned body, the perfect wardrobe. And as a Christian woman, we know that true beauty isn't just skin deep. We know it here, but if we're honest, sometimes we feel that pressure and we don't actually know it here in our hearts just yet, right? So maybe you have stood in front of a mirror, noticed a wrinkle or two, and feel like you don't look the way that you used to when you were young. And deep down, that little voice in your head, it's whispering like, "Am I still beautiful? Do people still like me?" And if you've ever wrestled with that, you're not alone. So many of us deal with that on a daily basis. But here's the truth: the most beautiful women on earth that I've ever met, they aren't the ones with those perfect model features. In fact, they're the ones who carry themselves completely different. They carry just a natural peace, joy, a confidence. Their stature is just totally different. And this all comes in a beauty that doesn't fade with time. And so let's go ahead and compare, what does culture say? And then what does God say about beauty? Okay. Culture, it's going to say things like beauty is all about youth, perfection, looking a certain way, weighing a certain way. Your worth is tied to how well you preserve your looks. Right. And so if you're aging to culture, you're losing value. But let's go ahead and talk about what God says about your beauty. Beauty, He says, is grace, kindness, wisdom. It's a heart aligned with Him. And your worth, it's unchanging because you were His. And so charm, it's deceptive, and beauty, it's fleeting according to the world standards. But a woman who fears the Lord, she is to be praised. And so, for anyone who's curious, that is taken from Proverbs 31, verse 30. I want you to think about that, because if you ever met an older woman whose presence was just warm, inviting, beautiful, radiating, right? Just being near her, it gives you that sense of safety and belonging. It makes you feel seen and known. She's not carrying herself with an aura that you have to compete with or try to impress. She may not have looked like a model, but she had something even better, and that's a beauty that radiates from the inside out. And that's what we're talking about. That's what I want for you today. So that's what the spirit body connection in action looks like. And so the difference between that charm that's fleeting and then that lasting beauty, okay? Because beauty, the physical beauty, it's going to fade, at least according to their standards. But spiritual beauty, it deepens as you age. It deepens with time. A joyful, a peaceful woman, she becomes more beautiful as she ages, right? That's something to be celebrated. And then women who focus on that inner beauty, they develop this irresistible presence. You can't stop but just being drawn to her. And we've all seen it. Like that woman in her 60s, her 70s, or 80s, she just glows. And then it's not because she had a perfect skincare routine, and maybe she did, but it's because her beauty, it's rooted. It's grounded in something far deeper than a reflection in a mirror. And so let's look at what 1 Peter 3:3 through 4 says. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyle and the wearing of fine gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of a great worth in God's sight. And so that almost could be argued that beauty is vanity, but we're going to get to that later. But God's definition of beauty, it isn't about striving. That's one thing I want to make with this scripture. It's not about striving, it's about resting in Him. It's about leaning into Him, knowing who you are in Him. So let's talk about fruits of the Spirit when you lean into Him and you rest into Him and who you are in Him. Okay. This is the stuff that He says is beautiful. And that's love. That's going to soften your expression. It's going to bring warmth to your face. Like people are going to just know that you care. Joy. That's the thing that lights up your eyes. It gives you energy. It restores things when you wake up in the morning, right? Peace. That's the thing that's going to relax that tension that you carry on your face and in your body. It's going to smooth out all those stress lines that we talked about last week. And then patience and kindness, right? That's that creating of a welcoming presence, that radiant presence that we're talking about that draws people in. And that's only a few of the fruits of the Spirit, right? But I just walked through how some of those fruits of the Spirit can affect even your physical appearance and in your beauty according to the world standards, okay? So think about a time when you truly felt joyful. Maybe you were laughing with a friend, like maybe you were at church just worshiping freely, or you were out beauty hunting and noticing God's wonderful creation, right? And then you just feel that sense of God's delight and His presence. Didn't that make you feel lighter? Like, didn't it probably reduce tension and help you relax a little bit more? Didn't your face probably reflect the joy that you were feeling inside? Like, that's because what happens in your spirit, it's gonna show up in your face and in your countenance and how you carry yourself. Okay. But what's one quality in a woman that makes her beautiful to you? It's because, we all come from different cultures. So even different cultures are going to think different things about what makes a woman beautiful. But when you look at that woman who does match that cultural expectation of the world and its beauty, she's beautiful on the outside, she's got perfect features, perfect body, perfect clothes and fashion, her makeup is flawless, right? But something might feel off. You look at her and you just think, what's wrong? Because everything about her's so perfect, right? But something about her could be heavy or tension. And there's something you can see but not see. But on the flip side, you meet someone by society's standards who might be considered not necessarily conventionally beautiful, but just okay looking, right? But something about her presence draws you in and you just think, man, she's the most beautiful person I have ever met in my life. She radiates that warmth and you can't help but want to be around her. That's because beauty isn't just about how you look. And again, I know that we all know this in our heads and our minds, but knowing it in our hearts is a place that I think takes practice and time. So that's why we're talking about it today. But it's something you carry. And if we're constantly being weighed down by stress and fear and comparison, it shows up in waves that we don't even realize that do create an acceleration in that physical aging. So when we carry that stress and that fear and that comparison, and let's just talk about how it could affect our physical appearance and our and accelerate our aging. Okay. So fear and anxiety, that could look like furrowed brows or a tight jaw, those worry lines that we when we're worried shows up on our face. What about unforgiveness? You know, that often shows up right here in our mouth. that downturned mouth that might give you the marionette lines, things like that. What about things like jealousy, comparison, insecurity? Those things in and of themselves make us very busy. It keeps us very busy because we're trying to keep up. We're trying to do all the things. So that could look like low energy. That could look like a slouched posture, something that looks closed off. And so you don't even have to say a word, but your posture, even the way you hold your face, it's telling the world what's going on the inside, and it's aging you physically. And that's not how the Lord wants us to live. He says, a heart at peace, it gives life to the body, but envy is what rots your bones. Right there is like the anti-aging secret of all time. It's right there in the Bible. Proverbs 14:30. I remember a season where of carrying a lot of stress, not sleeping well, constantly overthinking. And there's a lot of pressure to measure up, especially when you try to be a perfectionist, to be that perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect coworker. And then you just almost look in the mirror one day and just go, "Oh boy, I am tired. Like this is hard work trying to be perfect." How many of you can feel that even right now? But when you look in the mirror, all you can see was tense face. My shoulders were up to my ears. It's like, and you have that permanent furrow in your brow because constantly worrying, can you keep up? Can you keep up? Are you being enough? Right? And the truth is, it isn't just about getting more sleep, more rest, or drinking more water. You know me, my hydration nerd. I love talking about drinking more water, but it's not going to solve that permanent worry look on your face. And so it's deeper than that. When your stress is written all over you, the moment you really see it, the stress can literally change your face. Something had to shift. You just kind of go, this has got to stop. And here's what I realized. I was spending so much time trying to control everything, how I looked, how my life looked, how others perceived me, that I wasn't even trusting God with all of those details. And that's a scary place and realization to come from because no one wants to admit that they don't trust God, right? So that stress and that tension, it wasn't just about my schedule being full or my body just being tired. It was about the weight I was never meant to carry. And I know I have mentioned that over the last couple episodes. You have a burden that you were never meant to carry. And so those things are meant to be laid at his feet. The fear of not being enough, the pressure to prove yourself, the comparison that makes you question your worth. Lay those down, right? And then that's when you realize when you lay them down, you know, beauty actually is light, not in the sense of weight, but in the sense of a burden, right? Like women who radiate beauty have something in common. They aren't carrying unnecessary weight around with them. They've laid it down. They've traded that striving for that trust. So, how do you shift from fear over to that trust? So instead of worrying about the wrinkles, because we're going to be talking through the filter of aging, right? Instead of worrying about wrinkles, how about like worrying about how many hours of time can you just learn to rest in God's plan for you? And I'm not talking about laying on a bed and resting in that way, but I'm just talking about like every time you have that fear, like renew that mind, reset it, and hand it over to Him. Okay. Instead of chasing perfection, what about chasing the presence of God? Filling those extra space instead of with the news and all the how-to videos on YouTube, like fill it with worship music or time with the Lord, right? Instead of comparing yourself, what about forcing yourself to sit down and celebrate what God has given you and what He has done to make you you? You are uniquely you, and there's something about you that the world needs, and nobody else can give it but you. So do not conform to the pattern of the world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That is just so key here, right? Because there's a point of view I'm trying to shift you over to. And to have a new point of view, you have to transform by the renewing of your mind. And so that's Romans 12, verse 2. So the next time you catch yourself like comparison or self criticism, like if you can stop in that moment and just pause and replace it with something true from God's word or something true that he has spoken over you. And that can look different for everyone. But if you think you're not enough, like you can even say what I said a second ago, like there's something that only you can provide on this earth that no one else can. And that makes you totally enough, right? Like if you wish you looked younger, that's where you go, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Like that doesn't say that I lose value. And when you could think comparison thoughts like, "Hey, I wish I could be as put together as that person is, right? No, God has uniquely designed you for your journey. And you probably don't want to do what she had to do to get that. Everybody's journey is usually brought through sorrow before they get to the mountaintop. So, but confidence, it isn't about being the loudest person in the room. I want to make that clear. It's about whose you are, right? It's about being his daughter, God's daughter. I want you to picture a woman who walks into a room and you immediately notice her not because she's the most glamorous person or even the most put together, but because she carries something different. It's in the way she moves, it's in the way she takes up space, it's in the way she belongs, it's in the way she smiles. It's the way she takes up that space, right? That quiet assurance that we talked about last week. Okay. Now I want you to imagine you being that person, that same person walking in that same confidence, not because of your appearance, but we will have many weeks where we will talk about helping you with your appearance, but because you are deeply rooted in who God created you to be. That's the kind of beauty that shines through at any age. Okay. And it just comes from knowing who you are in Christ. The Spirit Himself, He testifies with our spirit that we are God's children, that we are His. So that all means that if you're the daughter of the King, you're already worthy. Okay. You're created in his purpose, in his image. So that means you're also created for impact, making a difference. When he says you're fearfully and wonderfully made, God didn't make a mistake in you. And you can tell I'm fired up about this because I am really, really tired of hearing women just living in the lies and in the securities of what the devil is wanting them to believe, because there's so much in you that the world needs and that you even need, that I'm calling your spirit to rise up today. Because again, confidence, it's not about that striving, it's about believing that what God already says about you. So for years, I thought confidence came from like what I could achieve or who I could impress or how I looked on the outside. So the days I was tired and I didn't get all dressed up, I was like, I'm not holding up and meeting up to the standard, right? But when I truly was rooted in my identity of Christ, I realized something. I don't have to prove myself. I just have to be who he created me to be. And that's when things started to change. That point of view and that perspective changed. So not just in how I felt, but in how I carried myself, how I showed up in conversations with people and in relationships with people, how I interact with others. Because when you know whose you are, you stop shrinking and living small. You stop apologizing for taking up space and you stop comparing and start owning that radiance that God has already given you. So it's in your beauty, it's a reflection of who he is in you. When you take care of yourself, even in the outward beauty areas, it's a worshipful act. So when you're walking in faith, walking in peace, that peace, it's attractive. Letting go of control and trying to be perfect, letting go of that stress and embracing who God made you to be, like that is unshakable confidence. And when people have that, people want to know how you got it. Part of the power of your testimony. It gives you a bridge to be able to share who God is in your life and be able to help them come to know him too. So here's scripture, Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your deeds, and glorify your Father in heaven. Like that's what your beauty and your radiance and how you carry yourself, that's what it's doing. You're letting your light shine before others. Okay. So what if your beauty just wasn't for you and you alone? What if it's part of how God designed you to reflect his light to the world? And then when you walk in your true identity, you don't just change the way you feel, you change the way others like experience God through you. Like that's a powerful way to look at things. So many Christian women, and I've been there, we've been taught that beauty is vanity, that it's something shallow or self serving. But what if that's not true? What if your beauty and your presence and your light is actually meant to be a reflection of God's glory? Let your light shine before others, right? Like that's telling us something if we are willing to listen. God didn't give you beauty so you could just hide it. He didn't create you in his image so you could feel less than. When you feel less than, it's almost like you're mocking his beauty. When you look in that mirror, he designed you to radiate his light, to walk in his confidence, to be a living example of his grace, his love, his joy, his glory, his peace, all of those fruits of the Spirit. And that glow and that radiance, it doesn't just come from chasing the world's beauty standards, right? It comes from knowing who you are in Him, walking fully in that truth. Um, and so that's why it is important, right? To, do the hard work to discover who you are in this new season of midlife, if it's new for you, or if you've been in it for a while and you just haven't landed on your 2 feet. It's important to do the work. When you do the work, you get on the other side and you get to experience just this beautiful place. And so we've uncovered a whole lot of really powerful things today. Beauty, it's not just skin deep, and it's definitely something not to be ashamed of. If you carry a lot of physical beauty, right? Because that's God's light in you, and it's there for a purpose. So when you walk in His peace and His joy and His confidence in who He created us to be, that's when your beauty is shining its brightest. You don't have to chase perfection. You don't have to shrink or hide. You don't have to compare yourself to a filtered version or an AI version of beauty that the world pushes you towards. You're already beautiful, designed by the Creator Himself in His image. You can't get any more beautiful than that. So, this week, I want you to practice something totally simple. Every morning, as you get up and get ready, instead of picking apart your flaws, I want you to speak to yourself in that mirror. Remind yourself of who God says you are. And so the first day, it may be really hard. So all you got to say is, you know what? You're a daughter of the King. You are worthy. You know, you are enough. And if you need help, go to Matthew 5:16 and remind yourself, let your light shine before others. So, Lord, I'm having a hard time believing the things that you've said about me. So, would you please help my light shine before others today? Because here's your beauty was meant to shine and not be hidden. Okay. And if today's message has spoken to you and you're ready to take this even deeper, make sure you go grab that workbook in the Making Life Beautiful Again Facebook group. I've included some journaling prompts in there, some scriptures to help you shift your mindset and step into that confidence that God designed for you. So, we've talked about the spirit beauty connection today, how your inner peace, faith, and mindset directly affect your outer glow. But what about the practical side of aging gracefully? Like, what do you actually need during your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s? What products and different things do you need to keep your skin radiant and youthful and glowing without relying on those harsh treatments and expensive products? That's what we're delving into next week. How to build a natural anti-aging routine at any age. So whether you're in your 30s and you want to prevent early aging, or in your 40s starting to notice those changes, or in your 50s and your 60s looking to just reclaim some of that glow, this is totally going to be for you. So I'll be breaking down that must-have skincare products and nutrition, even some face and exercise techniques that will help you look and feel amazing in any decade of life. Okay, you won't want to miss it. So join me next Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And until then, keep shining. Like let your light shine before others, right? And keep walking in his truth. Remember, God's beauty is totally all about being a reflection of his light in you. So see you next week.